Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Getting an early start today. The very first thing on the work session is a proclamation for the 66th anniversary of the sister city relationship between Hagerstown, Maryland and Basel, Germany. Bev and Dusty are here, hopefully.
And Connie.
And Connie. Good. Come on up, guys.
Hello. Hi. Hi, ladies.
Bev's our president, so we'll let her go in the front.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, nothing beats having the Burgermeister of Basel here last year and riding in
That was
the
fun.
parade. I tell you, that was a first for both of us. So.
She was jealous of your jacket, so we got her one as a gift.
Oh, cool, really? Yeah, hell, she could have mine.
No, she's been on brave.
I don't ever use it. Cool. Well, tell her to take a picture and send it to me. I'll prepare. All right, a certificate of appreciation for the 66th anniversary of the sister city relationship between Hagerstown, Maryland and Basel, Germany. Whereas wishing to set an example to symbolize peace and the ending of a horrific war, the cities of Hagerstown, Maryland and Basel, Germany formally joined hands as sister cities by public proclamation on March 10, 1952. These cities have continued to share this affiliation for the past 66 years. And whereas devastated by the bombings from the U.S. Air Force in World War II, Basel suffered 98% destruction of its town and the deaths of 600 of its citizens in a 3-day period of time in 1945. Despite this suffering, the people of Basel lived up to their honorary name of Hospitable Basel and reached out the olive branch to their former enemy, an enemy who ultimately brought peace and freedom to their country. And whereas the process began in 1951 when Dr. Karl-Heinz Ruber contacted Operation Democracy in New York to seek assistance in finding an American town that was suitable and willing to initiate a friendly relationship with Basel. County Manager of Reeves County, Dr. von Bonninghauser, also made personal contacts with Hagerstown while he was touring the United States. Mayor Mills of Hagerstown seized this gesture of friendship and responded positively to the official offer of the mayor of Basel, N.R. Owald Fornell. By 1952, the pact was signed by both cities. And whereas today both cities continue to promote programs such as the August-Toberfest to celebrate the partnership of Hagerstown and Basel. Now, therefore, with the support of the City Council, I, Robert E. Brucci II, Mayor of the City of Hagerstown, Maryland, would like to thank the City of Basel for 66 years of friendship and encourage citizens in Hagerstown and Basel to continue close ties through cultural and educational exchanges, tourism, and friendship. And I'll offer that to you. You guys want to say anything?
Dusty wants business.
I'm new at this, so I'm not very good. But I just want to say thank you to all the support that we've gotten from the City Council and the help that we get from Danny. And October 6th is German American Day, a National German American Day, proclaimed by Ronald Reagan. And it was commemorating the founding of Germantown, Pennsylvania, the first German settlers. 16-something, yeah. And, yeah, we have Rocktoberfest is coming up, also not here, but that's in Rockville. That's another, they have a German partnership as well, so they'll be celebrating their Oktoberfest. And we just completed our Sister City Exchange, and I got to be a chaperone for that, which was so much fun. All 4 of my children have gone starting in 2006. So this time was really fun because I had met some people throughout those years, and I was in downtown Basel at the Berliner Tor, and I hear someone calling my name with an accent, and I look up, and it's one of the city council members that had been here to visit. So it was such a surprise, and I felt so special, you know. But it's a great relationship, and we hope it continues.
And one of the city councilmen that came in October had such a great time that he text or emailed me before Christmas and said, I had such a great time in Hagerstown, I'd like to bring my wife. So they came in August, the first weekend in August, and spent a weekend here with us. So we repeated some of the things we did before.
And
So
just-
what we do goes way beyond just the government going back and forth.
Right.
And just last week, we had one of the original teachers that brought kids over in 1987, who was in New York, came down and visited for 3 days. So we still have those partnerships.
Ties that keep on
ties that
going.
keep us going. And we have a couple more things coming up. October 20th at the Women's Club is a German dinner, and March 3rd, 2019 is our Best of the Verst. So watch for those dates.
Best of the worst. You heard it here first. All right.
Thank you.
Eric, you going to get a picture?
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay?
Great,
Good.
great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on up, Eric. Next on the agenda is to continue discussions on parking rate changes. And I'm going to have Eric do his presentation, and then we're going to have some guests come to the table also.
Thank you. Wasn't quite sure what to write here in this memo. Wasn't quite sure what the consensus was at the last time we spoke 2-3 weeks ago. What I did is I looked back on the video and summarized from the guests that were there, guest speakers that night, and kind of reviewed their arguments, I'll say, against the parking increases. And just to summarize, basically say, nothing was said that changes my professional recommendation that we keep the rates as they are. And basically what I'm recommending is, and what we currently have in place, was a modest 3% increase on the parking deck permits, which were last changed in 2014. So you're talking about a 3% increase since in 4 years, and a 4% increase on the parking lot rates, which also were last changed in 2014. So it's been 4 years since either one. Basically, they both went up $2 a month. The other recommendation was the bulk discounts. There's a number of bulk discounts that were applied, the 10 and 25%. They're still in place. That hasn't changed. That wouldn't change until July of 2019. We did that to make sure that the businesses, again, would have time to look at their options and decide what other, if they wanted to continue or try other options, but it gives them plenty of time to figure out. It would also be after, or hopefully towards the end of the UIP, the Maryland Theater and of course the Board of Ed, BISPA, coming to the end of their programs. Hopefully in a year they're coming to the end of those projects. So we definitely wanted to make sure there was time for that. And of course the other large item in there that was discussed was the student rates for USMH. Again, the student rates were very, very beyond reasonable, I'll say, at $40.70 a semester. Some of the concerns about students not being able to find parking, that sort of thing, hasn't happened. The school's been back in session basically a month. As far as we know, the students have decided either to buy a permit or try other options, but we've had very few. At the very beginning, we had a number of calls. We explained the situation, but since then, as far as we know, students are buying permits just like anybody else and moving on. But again, my recommendation remains the same. But again, it's my recommendation. The rate's already in place. That's up for mayor and council to decide what they want to do from here.
And I will say that Michelle just could not be here today, and Michelle and I and Eric went through the rate analysis again, and we were all on the same page that the rates, as we originally projected, should be kept in place, and most especially if there's any thoughts of a future parking deck.
Well, my understanding is, I apologize, I wasn't at the Thursday goal setting. I was off that whole week, actually. And my understanding is that the council has decided to move forward on a third parking deck.
They have a group
Maybe I
decision.
misunderstood.
No, they had a group decision to make that part of their goals.
Oh,
just
okay,
to begin
okay.
planning a third
Okay.
parking deck, yes.
Understood.
Right, a far cry from beginning
Okay.
actual
Fair enough.
one of parking deck.
fair enough. But the idea is to build up a reserve fund, obviously, because 1.2 billion sounds like a lot, but, you know, when you're talking about building a parking deck at an average cost of 18, actually I heard today that the costs are going up, but let's say $18,000 per parking space. $1.2 million just doesn't go very far. And not that we're gonna build the whole deck in cash or buy the property in cash but we don't know how many drivers or new drivers we'll actually have. We're hoping that we have enough, but if we only cannibalize parking from other areas, we may not bring enough revenue in to cover our expenses with the debt service of the money we borrow. So it's good to have that reserve or have built up that reserve, and that's all I'm trying to do here.
How many bulk rates do we have? I know we have Middletown Valley Bank.
Oh, you mean, number of people that have it?
The discount?
You may have the discount,
Top of my head, 10.
about 10 or so, yeah.
No, there are.
But that includes-
There are only 3 that have the 25%, the rest are the 10%.
And what three would they be?
We have Park Oliver,
Middletown?
Middletown, and I can't think of the others off the top of my head. I think it was Social Services.
I think I had that all listed in the original memo, and
Okay.
sorry, I didn't bring that along
Oh, I
with me.
didn't bring that either.
But, again, that rate was it was clearly spelled, was a temporary,
No, I understand.
22 years ago.
When did Middletown Valley come here? When bank?
We opened in April of 2016.
Thank you.
I knew it only been a couple of years, couldn't remember the exact date, so, yeah. And they currently have 27 parking permits.
That's an incorrect number.
Okay, what is the number?
We have 48. So the actual number that we have 27 for the city lot and 21 for the deck. So our total parking passes that we have in our possession is 48. It's been 48, pretty much since June of 2016.
Did they not turn in? I thought we
That
had
took us-
I
we
thought we
took
had an
an
accurate
additional-
count.
We took an additional 21 for the city lot in July, of which we returned them August, in August. That took us up 1st of September.
Oh, so you had over 60, you're saying, so then you gave the 21 back.
Correct.
Is that
We've always
equal to
had
our
over
count?
40. Always, since the very first day, we've had over 40.
Okay,
My
we need
mistake
to-
then.
we need
I'll
to
check
look
with
at
our
the-
staff, but my mistake then.
Yeah, we need to look at that.
But we'll definitely look at it, because
Yeah,
we'll look at our billing.
Because that's not what we have in billing, okay.
It says here the bank certainly had 48 or more parking permits in the lots and the decks on the 28th,
Yes.
on August 28th. So,
During
That's
that
their
discussion.
account.
But there was a return back.
They
So
returned
we just have to
29
get that
back.
straightened out.
Yeah. I thought they had 27. I thought they had 16 in the parking deck and 11 in the parking lot. But,
okay. So you guys got to coordinate your numbers.
yeah, we'll certainly check
Yeah,
our
we gotta
records. I
look
mean,
at-
we bill every month, so,
We have to look at the billing for sure.
yeah.
Yep. Lou, you were going where with that?
Well, where I was going with that, and it fits in with what you've heard from me in the past, ever since we've heard from these folks. I, to a large degree, agree with staff with regards to what we need to do with the parking rates. Having said that, and I have said it before, I'm gonna say it again, I think there is an economic development issue as it relates to parking, both with regards to getting new businesses and retaining businesses. I know that we have appropriately enacted 6 figures worth of whatever you want to call it, first, third, or however you want to
Invest Hagerstown.
invest Hagerstown. And some of that money is going to make sure that we have businesses that come here, stay here, retention. The reason I ask about when Middletown Valley came is because there's one thing to say, we've been here for 10 years and we haven't seen a rate increase. It's another thing to say, you know, a year and a half to 2 years ago, we started looking, and this is one of the things that brought us here, and now we've been here essentially less than 2 years, and suddenly, if you would have told us this is what you were doing back then, we wouldn't come here. So now we're here, and you have choices. So what I would say to people like the bank is be aware there are other alternatives to your parking dilemma other than us not changing the rates. So we could change the rates, and we could say it's pay-as-you-go, and we could look at a business such as yours and say, as an economic development issue, we need to make good promises that were made and sit down with the bank and say, this is what we're gonna do with you with parking over X amount of time. It's just a thought process. It's my thought process. I just want you to hear it in case you hear me repeatedly say that I may support the parking rate structure. Does not necessarily mean that there should not be some things taken into consideration.
Do I have the opportunity to address that?
That's,
Yeah, yeah, as a matter of fact, you guys,
Yeah,
Mark and BJ were gonna come up anyway, so.
So I would like to take the opportunity to address those comments. And from the bank's perspective, if you go back and look, our planning phase to enter to the Hagerstown market actually began from a planning standpoint in 2012. We entered the city of Hagerstown in 2015 with our branch located on Eastern Boulevard and Professional Court. We made the conscious decision to bring the number of jobs to the city of Hagerstown, of which we have about 43 here today. We're in the planning process to bring another approximately 40 to 50 new jobs to the city of Hagerstown. We asked for and received no support from the city of Hagerstown. And when we were here last time, you made a very interesting statement when you said if a new business is talking about coming to town, the county, the state, everybody starts opening their checkbook, quote unquote. We did not ask for that support. We did not ask for anything. We invested our money in our space and created extremely nice space. Anyone that would like to come see what we did with our space, it is a testament to what can be done. One of the things that did appeal when you take into the parking consideration rates, I will tell you that these numbers are not correct. The actual $6 per square foot that parking adds, remember I'm a banker, we can run the numbers, it is truly $6 per square foot. When you start to compare that with what we are paying in rent and CAM, for the landlord to get a reasonable return, you are starting to compete with Class A space outside of the downtown core. Decisions such as changing the parking, because it was in our cost analysis in the beginning, and the conversation and discussion was had, that change is significant. It is certainly acceptable that we make the choice to cover the parking cost of our employees. It is not as simple as just simply start charging the employee for the parking, because then you start to become uncompetitive in the labor market, which is not acceptable to a growing company that has taken through the board, through its customers, and through its employees to make a commitment to the city that we made. And I would tell you that our discussion here today, in the way that this has been laid out, is not something that becomes sustainable. Therefore, we ask you to consider where this comes from and where this is going. A statement that says a new deck may not pay for itself, so we must charge the ones that are using the parking today to cover that cost. I question that thought process. Because there you're saying, well, we might not need a new deck, but let's go ahead and build it. And then the people that aren't going to use it can pay the difference in the shortfall. All of that being said, I believe firmly that if sides come together, there is workable compromise. But the workable compromise must be done in an open discussion fashion with options that resolution is achieved and determined that's in the best interest for all parties. My question the evening that I was here said, what is the vision overall for the city? I still ask that question. As a business owner, as an employer of a significant number of people in downtown, I still ask that question. I know what my vision for downtown and for the downtown core is. My question is, what is yours? We may differ, we may disagree, but if we don't understand the visions that we have together and all of the pieces that go with getting it there, it becomes difficult to achieve. That's my stance on the situation with the parking. The parking is not something that was necessarily used to attract Middletown Valley Bank, but in our cost analysis to make the determination, we knew that if we were under 25, then the discount was 10%. We knew that when we opened our doors in April of 2016, we would have approximately 23 people in that building. We knew today we would be out of space in that building at 43 people. Those are the situations and the facts over the last 2 years. And I would say to you, as a council and a staff, it is always easier and less expensive to keep a customer or keep an employee than to buy a new customer or train a new employee. Those would be my comments regarding the parking situation. To address the compromise, I would tell you that I was unfamiliar with 2 different studies that were done. I may not be correct in saying one was 2012, one was 2014. Am I wrong?
That's correct. 2012 was the parking management plan,
Okay.
and 2014 was the urban partners plan.
So I would tell you an alignment and a mutually beneficial situation would be for the business community that is committed to downtown, along with the staff and the elected officials, spend some time reviewing that in conjunction and together to understand so that we're all going with the same vision and the direction that things are going and where we want to get it to. Those would be my comments.
Thank you.
The idea of raising money now for a garage in the future is sound economics. I mean, businesses do that, families do that. The question that keeps coming back to me is, we don't know, we want a lot of our students after they graduate to stay in Hagerstown, but we really don't know who's going to stay in Hagerstown and who's going to move on to another job someplace else. For the people that do move on, I really have to question whether or not they should be responsible for paying for a infrastructure to a city 5 or 6 or more years in advance of their departure. So in that case, I am certainly not an advocate of raising taxes. I don't mean it to sound that way. But when we talk about taking out a bond and paying the monthly cost on a bond to build a building, then the people currently using that building are the people paying the bond, as opposed to it having been paid in the past by people who are not users. As far as our students, at this point, we have told them that until we have something more concrete, the best option for them is to pay on an hourly basis. For evening students, if they have 1 class per week, and so let's presume that's 3 hours, and that would be $2 a week, then they're much better off to do that than it would be a $40.70 permit for the semester. At the point that they take 2 classes, then it becomes, for that student rate, it becomes better for them to buy the permit. Well more than 50% of our students are enrolled in more than 1 class at a time. So that's an issue that we are definitely using alternative means to parking other than the University District garage, they're definitely going to see an increase. They won't see the same level of increase as eliminating the student discount altogether and asking a student, some certainly working and others are not working, to fork over $240 a semester as opposed to $40 a semester. For most of our students, yes, tuition is expensive, but they have planned over time for those expenses. I think the university system has been quite conscious about increasing tuition rates 2% a year, and people have kind of accumulated or acclimatized to that kind of a number. Any number, even if it's in the hundreds as opposed to the thousands of dollars, when you're increasing the percentage by close to 500%, then that takes people by surprise and by shock. I personally would recommend that we take this year for the students. We have a year for the bulk rate for companies before anything goes into effect. I would recommend that we revert back to the $40.70 rate per semester for students for the same intervening year. And during this year, leading up to June 30, 2019, we do just as BJ has suggested, and use whiteboards and ideas and really come up with alternatives that help the city achieve its goals. And I think very specifically, help the city to achieve what the budget numbers are that are needed and necessary. And that's going to take some amount of time to kind of go through and dissect and understand what's the real income that is needed, and then do we achieve that in 1 year, or do we achieve that over a period of 3 or 5 years?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? Just simply out of naivety. I do have a statement, just to make very quickly. I appreciate the council and the staff's opening this dialogue and conversation. Based on the way that the approval was done, et cetera, you didn't have to. So just to go on record, I very much appreciate the dialogue and the conversation being opened. And I have tremendous respect for, and I've talked to many of you about this in the past, tremendous respect for an elected official and the challenges that you face. So with that, forgive my naivety in the political arena. Can I ask a question that you guys can answer for me? With the parking situation, I'm confused as to what is the true goal with this increase. If you're telling me that it's to make the parking situation today cover itself, I've been through the numbers and I can see where it certainly does cover itself. And I can ask some questions specifically as to why it doesn't cover itself. I'm confused, okay? And we can open that dialogue and dissertation. I don't know that that is the reason that we are having this conversation around the parking discussion. So I'm going to move and make an assumption to say that this parking increase discussion is not about the parking covering itself, because that is already happening with some excess funds to cover. So my only assumption can be is we are preparing for the new debt coming. Can you guys walk me through what the real thought process behind this is?
I can't. I can just tell you that, I can look at, oh, wait a minute, let me finish.
Yeah.
I can just say that when I look at the parking fund projections from now, okay, actually this goes back to 15, 16, clear up to 22, 23.
Okay.
all right? I know that there's a third parking deck in here, all right, and that starts in 2019, 20 for planning and things like that, 2021 construction. And yes, our bottom line shows this year, we have about 143 or 104,000 total net income above expenses
in
for this current
projecting?
fiscal year.
In the
Projected,
coming
yes.
fiscal year?
Well,
Because
in
I
this
can only
current
go off the
fiscal year,
last.
we're 136, so yeah, 104 for this fiscal year we're in currently right now.
Okay,
That's why I say current,
okay.
But if you go out
Does
to.
that still, and I don't have the,
Okay.
go ahead,
let
I'm
me
sorry.
finish, BJ.
Yeah,
But if you go out to 2021, in particular, it drops off to 60. If you go out to 21, 22, it's a negative 649 because there are costs in there associated with a third deck. Now, no one here knows how we're actually going to fund the third deck yet. These are projections of what would cost us if we did it all. Okay, that's what these numbers are. I hope to God that's not the case for the city of Hagerstown, that we have to go a third deck alone. I hope that it's involved in some other project, or that a private developer decides to do it, or that, I mean, any different number of scenarios I look forward to, besides just us on our own doing this. That's
Do you
these
mean the
projections are based
capital-
on.
Do you mean the capital construction of it or the annual carry cost? I'm trying to understand the 600.
This incorporates bonded debt.
Bonded debt and the
So it
cost-
includes
And then
the
the
debt
cost.
service that
And
goes
maintenance,
with
and
that?
maintenance on the current,
Right.
all the current structures and future maintenance there as
Additional
well.
staffing, yes, all that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So you are,
$100,000 to the good, it can be $800,000 to the bad.
okay.
so you are correct.
Day one.
As of right now, we're just
Right.
covering by about
Right
100
now,
grand.
$100,000 to the good,
Yeah.
$1 million in the bank. Day one, to be $800,000 to the bad.
About
And what's gonna happen when all
$287,000
those
in,
things open is those folks you're talking about right now, 2 years from now, that we're talking about, oh, well, you know, I really wanted to stay at $40. That deck ain't around, they're gonna be competing for the cost of those spaces. And there aren't gonna be those opportunities for providing discounts, because people will be competing for the limited number of spaces that remain available. Because just 3 years ago, I believe that the university deck, was it like 60% capacity? Now it's over 80%. 18
why
months
is
from
that,
now,
why is that 80% happening?
because you're seeing an increase in, that's right. So I don't understand this logic that you sort of wait for the meteor sort of to hit you to say, oh, I should have prepared to avoid that calamity. And that's what I feel like we're sitting here doing, is we're saying, we know that this is gonna happen 18 to 24 months from now, right? We know that. We know as soon as that happens, everything will open up. All these places are gonna open up at once. And then parking is going to
Can you
be,
define what places?
well, I mean, you keep asking us about the vision. I feel like we got a big sign of it that says $45 million UIP coming with half a dozen other economic development investment in at least half a dozen other buildings that I could name off the top of my head
With
right
what
here
going in
in
there?
downtown.
With what going in them? That's my
Well,
question.
some will be residential, some will be commercial. And residential, I think, will be more of a struggle than the commercial side will. And the issue will be that we will be in the position to have to fund this deck by ourselves, because let's face it, trying to get, 3 bodies on board and a private entity to fund what most would deem is, 1, a municipal responsibility, and 2, a public purpose, There's no way you're gonna meet the timing necessary. We are already behind right now, and we're saying, you know what, we'll wait 2 years. Then we'll talk about a property we might buy, and then from there, we'll come up with design plans, and then we'll be 36 months out. And then at that point, we'll try and get 3 public governmental bodies on board to come up with some formula to accomplish this. And I feel like it's sort of Edgewood or not, and name any other project all over again. And at that point, we will need parking. We won't just need it, we'll be behind, probably 1.5 years to 2 years behind in that need. Parking costs will escalate anyway, and we'll still be on day one if we have to go it alone, $700,000 upside down to a deck that nobody sat down now and started the planning, design, development, and construction process of. That's what I see, and we can sit here and we can do
According
that.
to-
And that's fine. I'm not of that mindset, nor am I of the mindset that, you know what, we'll wait, and then this body will turn to the taxpayers and say, hey, folks, we're in a little bit of a dilemma here. We're turning to you. We're gonna need you to pony up and bond on this and hope that we can work those things out. I think that's, well, I don't think that's the leadership that folks look for from me.
$649,000 shortfall in 2021?
If we even get to that point.
If you could, if I look at the June 17 through June 18, and we talked about the costs related to the new arm and so forth that was put in, right, the new gate systems and so forth. I see that as a $256,000 expense that came through the expenditures. I see a $132,000 shortfall in June 30, 2018, based on that one-time expense that is probably a capitalizable thing that would then be depreciated. I see $287,000 in depreciation. I'm assuming that's an annual depreciation? So
Yes, I believe that's correct.
so if I take those numbers, non-cash expense, $287,000 a year in depreciation for the maintenance on your decks, we also expensed an upgrade, which would be technically taken out of depreciation because the old gate system would have depreciated and needed to be replaced. The money was laid aside on that. That's a $450,000 transition in expenditures. If I look at the maintenance that was done in 2018, I'm being generous, coming up with about $50,000 in maintenance on the decks. There are maintenance contracts in place and so forth that cover the majority of the costs. What's the number that you're looking for in 2021? Because the revenue and expenditure side of things to generate $1.2 million, that covers 2 years if you build the deck. And the fear sounds like we may not have enough people to use that deck, therefore the new deck has to help pay for and cover the cost.
So we spend our reserves down to zero. I mean, that's the
not what I'm
logic here.
talking about.
You said you got 1.2 million sitting in the bank, we build a deck, you know what, that covers us for 2 years, which doesn't even cover us for that. We spend ourselves down to zero because we're banking on the assumption that we might have $50,000 to $400,000 in either operational maintenance or capital-related debt obligation in any particular fiscal year. We don't know that number for certain. We don't have that crystal ball that says, you know what, for the next 5 years, we can expect that number of operational maintenance or capital depreciated expense is going to be static, and therefore we're good to go on these numbers for that foreseeable time frame. I think that's.
So you're not looking 3 to 5 years into the future as to what the cost and the maintenance
Those
on the
things we
existing
can
deck?
expect. You're saying we spend down the capital reserve against
I'm
that
saying
debt obligation,
I'm
and then
saying
not
at
have it if something does happen.
$400,000 a year.
Well,
At $400,000 a year times 5 years, that's an additional $2 million. That's what I'm saying. The way it sits based on 2018's numbers.
There's others at this table that might want to plan that way. I'm not that way.
May I make a suggestion?
Go ahead, Lou.
Twofold. One, with regard to the issue of Middletown Bank and our other bulk users, we clearly understand that their rates wouldn't go into effect until July of next year. And I think it needs to be reiterated to everybody here that the vote to do this was 3-2. So before you even started, you had 2 council members that opposed this without any input from anyone else to begin with, okay? And you have at least, I think, 2 council members who voted for it, me being one of them, saying, hey, yeah, let's do what we're doing right now because we're interested in potentially looking and changing things one way or the other. So I think there's plenty of time for our staff, which would involve finance, EDC, and Eric, to sit down with these folks who are not going to be affected until July 19. And I understand that doesn't mean that, oh, hopefully we'll get it resolved by June of 19. I fully understand that. We have a budget. You all have to make plans. Having said that, the same is not true of the university system, which takes effect immediately right now.
Already in effect.
Already in effect. So and I'm not saying now that we're already like 20 minutes beyond the discussion point that we had, that we resolved that tonight, but what I would say is that now it's time that we need to address that aspect of this
We
thing
have this
sooner than later.
Before this semester is complete.
Yes.
There has to be.
That's what I would suggest.
Right.
And we work with Middletown and others with, like I say, these 3 departments, EDC, finance, and parking, to see, and I haven't heard anybody come to this table and say, what you guys are proposing is so outrageous because it involves increasing anything. That if you make an increase, you're nuts. I haven't heard anybody say that. I've heard people say, we want to be part of it. The questions you ask, you see many elected officials looking at you with good questions.
Agreed.
And the answer, quite candidly, I speak for myself, other elected officials may have different perspectives. A lot of what I do is staff-driven. Okay, so that's why a lot of us looked there. It wasn't insulting anybody. We have a lot of respect for staff. Now, staff is operating on the assumption that we're going to have a new deck. That clearly is an assumption that has not yet taken effect yet, and there's been cries for a new deck for at least the last 10 years. So I think all of this has to be addressed because you have a very valid point. If in fact we're not going to build a new deck in the next X amount of years, then the question is, what is the objective to raising the rates to this extent? Clearly, as I look at the university system, I think we need to get into a setup where they understand once we raise these rates, that whatever we raise them to, that they're going to go up every year, just like tuition does, and get into a position where we can project forward to what we have to do with them over 5-year plans or whatever, so everybody knows what's going on and how it's going to happen. So that would be my suggestion, Mayor. Like I say, it's already 3:45 now.
I'm gonna let everybody, I'm gonna go around the table. Shelley, got anything you want to say?
I agree. I mean, I kind of thought that's what we were doing tonight. I feel like we just consistently go back to.
Well, I don't think we're gonna answer the question at this table tonight with this council. I believe what we need to do is I agree with Lou. We have to work on the university, have something in place by December at the latest that makes sense for them and for our parking fund, and then have something, get a coalition of businesses together along with staff, including EDC, and have a conversation about, okay, here's what we're projecting, here's where our vision is, help us get there, let's get a consensus from a coalition of businesses and from our staff that this is the right path, and then institute that right path then. That's what I'm hearing from Lou. And that gives us until budget time anyway, to accomplish that, and I believe it can be done by
Well, I think that Mark said that, he wants the original plan.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not worried about
So-
Mark right this, I'm
Okay.
answering Mark's question. He's not gonna, it may not be the original numbers from before we voted to increase parking rates, but it may be something similar. And that's what has to be done with Mark and the university, is to come up with that number first and then work on the business coalition.
So, and then not being done in an open forum like this.
Ultimately.
Everything will be done in open
Okay.
forum, Shelley.
So,
That's
just
what
making
happens.
sure.
You cannot vote on something in a closed session. Emily, you're up.
I just had a couple comments based off comments you guys had made and questions you asked. You mentioned a whiteboard and a vision and how we all need to be on the same page, but it's frustrating for me to hear that because I feel like that's what we do every single Tuesday in a very open forum, and I think we're all very transparent about what we want. And we hold meetings that are public meetings. We did one at Elgin Station. We advertised to get community feedback, and no one shows up. And then we have Main Street meetings for the downtown businesses to say, what do you need? How can we help? What can we do better? And no one shows up. And then we have open meetings on Tuesdays where we can take, at the end of the month, where we can take comments and criticisms and emails, and no one sends them. So it's frustrating to hear that because we all have a vision and we all want to see downtown thrive, and we are all very thankful for your business and very thankful for your university and very thankful for everyone that puts money in here. We seek feedback all the time and we don't get it until someone's angry. So if you can find a way to get everyone in a room with a whiteboard that we can create a vision plan and have actual people show up and come and get on the same page, please know that I am 1,000% on board. I will lead, I will buy the room to do it. And I think all of us are. It's to get that participation, we ask for it all the time. I mean, I've been probably the most active on social media candidate ever in this county. And I ask all the time, what can we do better? What do you want to see from us? And to get people to actually give feedback until they're mad about something is almost impossible. So I just want you to know, I support that vision of us all being on the same page. Like, all we want is growth. That's what we want. But we are very staff-driven, and when Eric tells us something, like, yes, I voted against it. Him and I had a personal conversation as to why, but that doesn't mean I don't trust his opinion. He's an expert at this. If he says this and the numbers work, we trust him and we buy. It's not like he's slipping an extra $100,000 into his paycheck from raising parking rates. I mean, that's not anyone's intention. So it's frustrating because we have a very capable staff who works very, very, very hard to make ends meet and to deal with it on a very limited budget. So it feels very us against them, or the city of Hagerstown versus the businesses, and that's not the case. And I don't know how to fix that perception other than by doing this, but, I mean, we try very hard.
If I may, just make a comment on that, because I think you're right. My question around what's the vision is not, Kristen, that I don't understand what the vision of where we're trying to go. My question is, when you take that large framework of vision, what can be inhibitors in the build process? I believe that compromise, and I've said since the beginning, compromise is the way that we come to resolution on this. We're not sitting here saying that it doesn't make sense to figure out how we together fund the new deck, okay? But there has to be discussion in my mind around that whiteboard session, is not to review the vision, but to say the vision leads to the potential for a new deck. What happens with that? How do we fund that? It can't be just a one-way conversation, right? Both sides come together, we come to what is mutually agreeable, and that is, I believe that is potentially staff with 1 to 2 elected officials, or not, I don't know how this works, but we sit down, we spend the time to come to a resolution that makes sense to accomplish the goals. There's more than one way to get to the accomplishment of the goal. And if the goal is to figure out how we fund the new deck, then that's a very different discussion to see what the business community is willing to do in that conversation. That's my whiteboard thought, okay? Now, to your point, you have a valid point from the standpoint of the things that, you know, the city does to try to include, to gain feedback, and until somebody wants to come in and bang on the table and do those things, it doesn't work. And nobody listens until it directly impacts and affects them. Right or wrong is not the question there. The question is, how do we come together, both sides be open-minded to the conversation, to come to a resolution to do what we need to do? Enforcing things that are detrimental. We talked about a 2 to 3% increase. It's actually, no matter how you skin it, 28% to me, right? Because I'm getting a 25% discount, and you're adding 3% on top of that. That's a 28% change for me. That's detrimental. So how do we get there? But how do we get there without taking that drastic of a change? That becomes the question.
And then it becomes something that gets solved at a combined meeting.
Conversation, 100%.
Kristen?
I mean, you asked earlier, I look at this list of, just in the last 12 months, the Roslyn Building, the Bowen Project, the Hager 5 Project, Hamilton, huge building. The addiction assistance facility, the Schmenkel Stu, the Professional Arts Building, the District Court expansion, the WLR project, the theater project, and the doubling of BISFA. I mean, those are 12 projects that 3 years ago, 4 years ago, were ideas and conversations.
Agreed. And if
18
you
months
did
from
the
now,
research,
these won't be
Middletown Valley
ideas.
Bank is a major supporter of every single one of
Wow.
those projects.
And I guess as a governmental entity, I feel like it is incumbent upon us to make sure that the infrastructure is in place to accompany that economic development that occurs. And it's sort of like when BISFA was being built and folks say, oh, you're opposed to it. And I said, I'm not opposed. I just have a basic question, where are the kids gonna eat? 6 months after it opens, what's the problem? Nobody knew where the kids were gonna eat, and if it wasn't for the Bridge of Life, I don't think they would have figured that out, right? Or when we opened the $25 million library, and I said, you know what's gonna happen? I'm looking out this bay window, I can remember distinctly, I said, if we open a $25 million library and we're staring at these two pieces of junk buildings back here, we have failed to accomplish that goal. What do? 6 months after the library opens, we're staring at two pieces of junk buildings that government owns. And I guess, for me, that's the point, is I feel like those are the things we should be cognizant and aware and prepared and plan for in conjunction with the private activity that's going to occur.
And Kristen, I would agree with that 100%. My only comment would be allow us to be a part of the conversation to come to a mutually agreeable resolution. That's what I would ask for. Because your points are all valid. If the need for the deck comes and we haven't solved that problem, and I say we haven't solved that problem, that's detrimental. Why did I come to downtown, right? I came to downtown because I wanted to be a catalyst to private industry coming into town and bringing high, well-paying jobs into the city of Hagerstown. Why? Because of the vision that the city has, because of the transition that's going on. If I fast forward 5 years and that hasn't occurred, then I've not been a part of solving that problem, right? I'm a for-profit business, you're a governmental entity that has to provide services. As a for-profit business, for me to come into the downtown corridor, the fact of the matter is, we want to make more money, which means we need it all to thrive. So we want to be a part of that conversation and see it move forward. And if it were a point, my point a few weeks ago was the fact of supply and demand. If the demand for the spaces is that high, I'm coming and saying, yeah, I need them, right? That's simple, basic economics. Because if the decks are full, I have traffic and inflow in and out of my business. The restaurants are thriving. Things are continuing to grow and improve in downtown Hagerstown. My staff wants to work here. All of those things are the wins that drive the price for the future. But it's a question of when do they drive that price? And it's a question of how do we accomplish being prepared before it gets here. But how are we doing it that's mutually beneficial to both sides? So that, the last thing, and I talk about it within my company all the time, you can't go like this, you must go like this. So my commitment to this council, my commitment to this community and this city is I want to see it thrive. I want to see it get better. So let's sit down and have the conversation that's mutually beneficial to both sides. And that's what I ask staff. I agree with you 100% on the comments of looking to staff. You should look to staff You really think I know every minute detail that goes on in my world? I can't. I have to be confident and trust what the staff is saying and what the staff is telling me. We just want to be a part of that conversation to come to a resolution with both sides being open-minded and willing to have the conversation. That's what we're looking for.
Austin?
First of all, I want to thank you for coming tonight and for the financial analysis that you put into
Right, wrong,
into the problem. You know, we keep talking about a public-private partnership, and I think this is a good example of that in that we want to work together on a solution. We've talked about the council and mayor. We rely heavily on staff to give us the information. And at times, though, we don't give staff a clear enough definition of what they are to plan for. In this case, a third parking deck. Are we going to do it, or are we not going to do it? When are we going to do it? You know, there are different opinions around this table as to when it's going to be needed, how critical, what the critical mass is. And on one side, you know, we have individuals that think we're way behind the power curve. Others, myself included, I don't really know. I don't know how it's going to fit into the overall development scheme. I appreciate the offer to sit down with a whiteboard and come up with a plan. I think that is what we need to do, and that will help us articulate the vision better. And we really do need more input, though, from businesses, from the educational institutions, from developers in the city to help us with the vision. Because, and to echo just what Emily said, last week we had a goal-setting session, and we sat there with the entire staff and the entire council and the mayor looking out on 80 empty chairs in a public forum with no media, no press, no TV cameras. Nobody came. It was a nice meeting. We got a lot of work done and discussed a lot of things. But you know, we're trying to put ourselves out there, and I want to meet with you and be a part of a community discussion like this. Let's figure out together what is the vision, and then we can all work toward a common goal, and then we can give direction to staff so what they should plan for.
Well, the great thing about being the mayor is I get the last word. So I will tell you that people ask us all the time, and we've heard it sometimes even heralded at the podium from citizens that, you know, you have an agenda. Okay, listen. I came into this administration. I did have an agenda. I still have an agenda, and one of those items on my agenda is to finally build a third parking deck. And there's a reason for that, because I've been saying it for the last 10 years. You will never redevelop the first block of West Washington Street and be productive in that redevelopment and successful. You will not redevelop the first block of Summit Avenue. You will never redevelop the first block of Jonathan Street or the second block of West Washington Street unless you have adequate public parking within striking distance, which is West Antietam Street. Now, if we want to see the Shockey Piano Building become successful, you're going to need that parking. If you want to see something else happen with the Dagmar than what's currently there, you're going to need that parking. If you want Hager 5 and the university with their PA and their wet labs and all that stuff to be successful, you're going to need the parking. So let's accomplish that. Let's at least break ground in this administration. And when the 30,000 square foot expansion of the Maryland Theater is done, and the doubling of BISFA is done, and Hager 5 is done, and the Schmankelstube has done its renovations, and we're going to have a successful downtown along with adequate parking that will prop up all those businesses. So, having said that, we'll get together with Eric and reach out to some people, and we'll figure who's going to be in this coalition, this meeting, and we'll get it done here in the next, for the businesses within the next 4 to 6 months, and for the University of Maryland, definitely before December 1st.
Thank you very much
Okay.
for your guys' time.
Thank you guys
We
very
appreciate
much.
it greatly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, preliminary agenda review is next on the agenda. We want to try to get out of here on time if we can. And bankers are worse than attorneys. You ever notice that?
I agree.
It's a toss-up.
Thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we have a call to order. Councilmember Metzner will give the invocation next week. We have the pledge of the flag. We'll do some announcements. Meeting dates in October are the 2nd, 9th, 16th. Our work session's at 4 p.m. The 23rd is a regular session at 7 p.m. We'll have some guests, I guess. We've tried this a couple times. The 2018 Highlight Hagerstown Awards. I guess they'll be here next Tuesday. We'll have citizen comments, city administrators' comments, mayor and council comments, and we will adopt the minutes of July 10th, 17th, 24th. Oh, let's try that again. July 10th, 17th, 24th, July 31st, August 7th, August 14th, August 21st, and August 28th. Donna has been very busy.
Yes.
Moving on to the consent agenda, the very first item is community economic development, and it's a street closure request for the city center tree lighting event in downtown in November. We're okay with that, right? We talked about that, we're fine with that, correct? Okay. I'm not gonna keep asking that question, so if you need to stop me, stop me. All right, next up is, under police, we have Safari Land Ballistic Vest, Atlantic Tactical out of New Cumberland, PA for $15,039.30.
Mayor, I'll stop you on this one. It doesn't relate to this, and I know this is sole source, and we're gonna have a number of sole source. But I found it a little distressing. This is the first time I can ever remember, when we go through these, you will not find one contract for competitive bidding. Everything is either sole source or only one bid. I don't think I've ever seen that before, and I think we need to find a way to avoid that. Not sole source, I mean, sole source you can't avoid.
And this was actually a bid through,
Oh, no,
Yeah,
no,
Montgomery County, so,
I understand. So, just like we have traffic control coming up here, that's sole source, we have a number of sole
Right,
source
we do.
items.
You're correct.
But we do have some competitive bidding there that there was no other bids on.
Yeah.
But I totally understand sole source.
and I
items.
noticed that this bid actually comes in almost $5,000 under, what was allocated, so that's $5,000 in
Right.
general fund money that can go guess where? West Hagerstown. Thank you. Next up is a monthly delinquent citation collections from Breckford, $55,000. Chief, I'm gonna ask a question. What has been the success rate of paying these guys, this additional money in this addendum to the contract? Have we seen any success in delinquent, in
I know
collecting
Michelle-
delinquent accounts?
Michelle's been monitoring that. I know this is the contract
Yeah.
that got extended to 2020
Yeah.
to automatically renew, so I don't really have an exact answer on that, but I know Michelle was tracking that.
All right, I'll get her.
So we can get with Michelle. She's not here today, so,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. All right, under Public Works, signal controller components, Econo Light, Glenbury, Maryland for $20,507. Under Utilities, we have Light Line Work Services, Everhart Hoover Power Line Construction, Houston Town, PA, $150,000. Under Light, we have Distribution Transformer Repair and Refurbishment, Emerald Transformer, Twinsburg, Ohio, $50,000. Under Water, we have Fluoride Feed System and Scalatron Scale, Environmental Service and Equipment Company, Marcus Hook, PA, $36,534. Water and wastewater, we have stone and asphalt from various vendors. Water is going to spend $48,265. Wastewater is going to spend $99,436. Under wastewater, we have boiler replacement for the control building, Beaver Mechanical Contractors, Hagerstown, Maryland, $85,900. Under unfinished business, we have the approval of an ordinance, Chapter 197 amendments. Under new business, we have introduction of an ordinance authorizing the sale of property located at 28 to 48 East Baltimore Street. And we have an introduction of an ordinance, smoking changes in our parks. And we'll cover that this evening. Approve a resolution, change of park hours, we're gonna cover that. Approve an amendment to fiscal year 19 CDBG annual action plan, creation of a new activity for Potterfield Pool rehabilitation, we're gonna cover that. Approve a resolution authorize entering into grant agreement with the Maryland DHCD for the Board of Education expansion project. Approval resolution authorizing entering into a sub-recipient agreement with the Board of Education, pass through a state grant for the BOE expansion project, and the approval of the Birmingham School for the Arts Foundation Holiday Lamppost Decorating Project. We have an approval of fiscal year 2018 Justice Assistance Grant, the approval of after-school program at R.W. Johnson Community Center, the approval of Potomac Edison Priority Tree Easement, and then the approval of request to lease space at 60 West Washington Street to Fresh Academics. Any questions on any of those items? Fantastic. All right, moving on then, we're gonna go to reprogram CDBG funds for needed repairs at Potterfield Pool.
Good afternoon. Most fiscal years, I'll work with Rodney and his team during the mid-year to see if there are any additional needs for funding for capital improvement projects. And in recent discussions, Rodney and his team have been planning for Potterfield Pool improvements, and Rodney can maybe talk a little bit more about the needs of Potterfield Pool, but at this time, we do have some available CDBG funding from previous year activities that were either completed under budget or they just were underutilized, and we would look to maybe shift those to Potterfield Pool activities that are in need to maybe have the pool open for next spring. So if Rodney maybe wants to chat about
Sure. Good
the needs
afternoon.
there.
Good afternoon. The main thing that we need to do down there is replace the sand filters. So the water of a pool is chlorinated and it's treated that way, but it's also filtered. And there's a sand filter system that it runs through. The sand filters down there are the original ones from 1970, and they are wore out. We had problems all summer with sand getting lost in these filters and being transferred.
Accumulating on the base of the pool.
Yes, and basically, we can't operate the pool next year if we don't do this. Some of the other maintenance things we'd like to do is put a new roof on the pool house, upgrade the locker rooms, and that putting a coating on the floor, really brighten it up, putting new lockers in there. A lot of the lockers we have there now don't have keys anymore. They've, over the decades, have all kind of drifted away. And then the one thing that would be noticeable to patrons of the pool would be, we'd like to, at the splash pad, we have one toy that is basically a plunger-driven piece of equipment, I guess you'd say, that the kids can shoot water at each other. It's broken, so we'd like to replace that and also maybe put another one in because it's more interactive and the kids have a lot of fun with those kind of things. So that would be the kind of the one upgrade that the patrons would see. But a lot of this is really maintenance.
Do you have any idea who you'd get to do the sand filtration?
I have a bid ready on my desk to put out that would do the sand filtration and the splash pad. Everything else, Mark and our team would try to do in-house as much as possible.
We're doing sand filtration down Myers when it was like
Is that right?
125,000, so, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a cheap process.
It's not.
It's a specialized service.
Pools are tough. I mean, they take a lot of maintenance.
All right, any questions?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I have some. I also want to throw something out here because, as we've said, you know, we're to work on our budget process year-round now, what we're going to do. So we've got $174,500 in unused prior year CDBG funds, and we're going to repurpose that for the Potterfield Pool. Potterfield Pool is costing us $140,000 a year excess. In other words, it's the operational expenses. So I'm looking at, okay, we've got the CDBG funds available. We know we've got 140K not to crack here every year, year after year after year, plus additional maintenance to keep the pool open. So looking at some of the things that I'm getting dinged about by residents, you know, one of the big issues is the homeless problem. So, you know, and you know, one of the issues our police department has is what do we do with homeless people? When we, you know, if we can approach them and convince them to, by whatever means, to go take advantage of a program and try to find housing and try to find addiction counseling and try to find alcoholism counseling and try to get job training and get them someplace where we can make a difference. You know, the problem always is we don't have the money to do that. We've got some funding, we've got some programs, we've got CAC and other organizations there. But when you look back at what's the intent of the CDBG funding from HUD, it's basically to take care of the most vulnerable people in the community through housing and that kind of stuff. So who's more vulnerable than the homeless out there? And I don't know, Emily and I have talked to some of them. And again, it just seems to me, you know, if we're thinking about what do we want to do for the city, I know one of the things that is very disturbing to me is when I go sit out at Bulls and Bears or I sit out at 28 South, and I've got, you know, there's a guy that's kind of taken over that corner between Alexander House and down to the about 2 blocks down, marking his territory every day, and literally marking. You know, what do you do to try to, is that the kind of thing we want to have in the city, you know, to try to attract investors, to attract residents and everything else? But we don't really have anything to offer him. So my question is, from a budgetary standpoint, you know, if you look at this 174,500 CDBG funds, plus take the 140,000 we're going to spend out of the general fund to keep the Potterfield pool open, plus take the 320,000 we're going to take out of the general fund to keep the golf course open, there's $634,500 that we could do something with to address the homeless problem downtown that is going to be operating in a detriment to our goals to develop the theater, the Maryland University. I know I went down to the prayer walk for the Washington Goes Purple, and I parked in the university deck parking garage and went down the stairwell on the back side, and someone had defecated in the stairwell, and it was quite pungent that day. And that's the kind of thing, you know, for a new student coming to look at the University of Maryland campus, a parent to come, a business person to come look for, that's what we're dealing with. That's what I was saying, that, you know, we've got people marking their territory, and I'm saying they're literally marking their territory downtown in the arts and entertainment district where we want to attract people. So if we're looking at a budgeting scenario and we've got $174,000, do we want to dump it in the Potterfield pool when we're going to still need to front another $140,000? And it's basically, and I'm sure there's other stuff coming, you know, once we replace the filters and that kind of stuff, there's other maintenance coming. Asking the question, where do we want to put our money? Do we want to?
Jonathan, you want to give the breakdown of percentages that you can use CDBG money for?
Well, first of all, let me just say, if I thought that throwing money at that problem would solve it, I'd throw all the money you have at it. That's my issue. I don't know if we got $500,000 and said, let's put it towards the homeless problem, where that would get us. I don't know many of these people that are living on the street that don't have other options and choose not to use them. That's one of my concerns. To the golf course, you can't say dollar for dollar, only because we're still gonna have significant maintenance expenses there, even if we shut it down. And the last thing I would say is taking away that public amenity in the middle of the summer to those who can't afford any other relief may end up financially causing us more problems than it would solve.
Yeah,
I don't know that for sure,
I
but I
believe the
suspect.
Potterfield pool absolutely
Yeah.
serves one of our most vulnerable populations for the most part, and that's where Boys and Girls Clubs go.
Yeah, I think it
Girls' Day
fits right
clothes,
into these other things we're doing for summer.
I think it would be detrimental to our community to close the Potterfield pool because of, and if we're talking about an underserved population, I mean, the majority of people that go there are involved in that. And I think to take that away would be just not the right decision. We already have kids getting in enough trouble. They need things to do, and that pool provides, there are some kids that go there all day, every day in the summer, because that is what they have to do, period.
It's very
I think it
active.
would be detrimental. I do believe that we should have a homeless conversation, though, maybe not at this time, but, I mean, I know all of a sudden this is a hot topic issue in Hagerstown because of the people that are under the bridge with their stuff, and so we're seeing it. But, I mean, there's homeless everywhere, and I don't think it is unique to Hagerstown, and I think this, and you're right, we're getting bombarded with complaints, but I just, this is not unique to Hagerstown. This is not a Hagerstown issue. This is not something that we're gonna solve. I mean, we can help, and the Homeless Coalition, I went to their meeting the other day, and there are so many organizations working together to try to solve it, but I don't think this is unique to Hagerstown. I think all of a sudden
No,
everyone
it's definitely not.
is,
And Mayor, you've been doing it enough years. How many years if I were a mayor, would they not talk about the homeless issue that they would solve? I mean, literally, every year that I can remember when these kids come up, if I were mayor, what they would do would involve.
it's frustrating to read these emails saying, I'm tired of looking at it. Well, if your problem is you want to move them out of sight, out of mind, you're part of the problem. You should be wanting to help them. You know, we're getting emails from business owners saying, I don't want to look at this when I go to work every day. Okay, so you want them to go in the woods so you can't see it anymore? It makes it non-existent? I mean, that doesn't, that's not solving the problem.
But I feel like that's only half the equation, and I feel like a broken record when I say this, and I think it speaks to Lou's point. Yeah, we could take this $175,000. We could take this money right now, if the percentages worked out, and we could give it to half a dozen service agencies in this community. Those service agencies aren't
attract more
going to,
people.
yeah, they're gonna expand operations and service capacity to bring in more individuals, that, a portion of which end up in the predicament in which you see. There is no mechanism which says it's going to diminish that capacity, because there is no inherent, I don't know, operations, within any number of these organizations that say, you know what, we're going to administer that aid to you know, this broader community. It doesn't work that way, and the state and federal directives, frankly, don't gear it in that manner. We are a destination, and if we give that money over, it would be used to expand the opportunities to attract additional need to this destination.
But
And
I
guess
do
who's not
think-
gonna use it? Those additional services.
Well,
The people who are living under the bridge.
Yes.
I think it would be a good idea to have the Homeless Coalition come in front of council and update what they are doing and what their projects they are working on. One, so the public can hear it. Two, so the media can hear it. And three, so staff can hear it. And if there is a way that the city can partner with the efforts that are already happening. But I disagree. You give people a chance. They do take it. Some people want help and legitimately need it.
And I'm telling you that one of the very visual problems that people are calling you about and calling me about, the one individual will never accept those benefits that'll be offered.
Right, but we can't make decisions based off that one individual.
Well, we have to make decisions based on what do we do with the people who don't want to utilize those services that can improve their life.
But that doesn't mean we alienate the rest of the population either. I'm well aware that
problem
that
with people who
one
want
person
help.
doesn't want help, but that doesn't mean that the 100 other ones sleeping in a camp right now with their kids do. I mean, you can't make decisions based off one person's mental illness.
Don't ever do that, ever.
I'm just saying, going forward, I think since we are having this conversation now, and this was part of my council comments tonight, I think we should have the Homeless Coalition come in. I sat in their meeting, Joey was there the other day. They have efforts going on. It would be good to inform us, to inform the media, to inform the people that watch these meetings, and then staff can look and see if there are ways that we can partner and help that too. 'Cause-
Well, let's invite them on the 2nd of October, when we have that on the agenda.
I think that would be great.
So my only point was, if we have this money available, and maybe it's not the homeless issue, but is the pool the correct use for the money? That's the only question I'm asking.
Well, Jonathan, can you speak to how you can use CDBG funds and the percent? I mean, I know there's a percentage. You probably don't have all.
In the case of the pool, we've actually already reached out to HUD just to verify, but yes, it does serve one of our low to moderate income populations. So it would be a low to moderate income benefit, meeting one of the CDBG national objectives, which is the primary objective to benefit low to moderate income citizens. As far as potential CDBG funds in the future for homeless efforts, you have the service side, which we would be very limited because they would likely fall under the public service cap. So you have to keep in mind that our current CDBG funding for public services goes mostly to the Community Free Clinic and Holly Place, and then you have some other entities like CAC, Children in Need, Girls Incorporated. They pretty much take up all of our public service cap space each year. That can vary from year to year, so we can always examine that, but there usually isn't a large amount of extra funding in that cap area unless we would maybe bump one of those pre-existing public service entities out of that section of the CDBG budget. For then other projects where it could be a facility like a homeless shelter, there isn't cap issues to worry with there. That would just be a matter of collectively agreeing, is there a worthy project that would maybe fund a facility or some type of shelter situation. That wouldn't run into any cap issues.
Austin, anything else on this?
That was it.
So we okay with
Yes.
sending out the bid for the filters and all that stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, action will come next week at your meeting.
Yeah, the CDBG requires a procedural
I just wanted to
amendment.
get a consensus.
I mean, if the alternative is the pool's closing, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's not an alternative.
Yeah, that's not.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Various parks and recreation proposals.
Mark and Amy are joining me here. We have several things here we want to just kind of fire at you, and I think there's 5 different proposals here, plus Amy would like to quickly review some of the recreation things we have coming up. We just wanted to kind of introduce these subjects. If you're open to them, then we would follow up with legislation maybe as early as next week. So I'm just going to start and go through them and see where we go. The first is, and we've talked about this before, about the park hours. Our park hours are from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. That is a very unusual time frame. From what our research shows, almost everybody else is using dawn to dusk, sunrise to sunset, or something like that. With the exception of parks like Fairgrounds Park, where you have events going on into the evenings, where those parks would stay open. But we're proposing that you change the park hours from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. to sunrise to either a half hour after sunset or just sunrise to sunset. Some of the reasons are given for that in here, that's just consistency with other agencies. There could be some financial savings here, or we could use those seasonals time that are the park attendants that are there when it's dark and there's barely, really no one there. We could reuse their time during the day, and basically for security reasons, basically when it's dark, the park's closed. So it would be our thought and recommendation that we change those hours.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
The next one is tobacco in the parks, or really all forms of tobacco products and vaping. Back in 2013, we passed a prohibition on smoking. We're suggesting now that we take that a little bit further. It would be all tobacco products, vaping, electronic cigarettes. That's consistent with Washington County's parks, and that would require that we just change ordinance chapter 173.
Yes. What is voluntary basis? Meaning, like, you can decide if you want to do?
They don't police it, it's kind of
Oh.
self-policed.
Okay.
And that's not too far from where we're at. We did have the auxiliary police help us when we first did the no smoking, and they helped some, and our park attendants do what they can. You know, it's trying to change the culture, I think, as much as being real hardline about it.
But we're not gonna specifically state that.
Right. We would put up signs, very visible, you know, those kinds of things.
Okay.
I'll keep going. The Hager House, we don't talk about the Hager House very much, but the three of us feel like we needed to have a plan on where we're heading with that. And it's in your packet, and it outlines things we want to do over the next few years, both making some physical improvements, but also some operational things and where we want to go with that. One of the things I'd highlight is we want to seek a Heritage Area grant to make a facelift in the Artifact Museum. I know you've all been in there, but it's rather tired 1970-looking birch plywood. I think just freshening that up with a grant would be really helpful. And you can see for yourself some of the other things that we're thinking about doing, mostly with in-house with our staff. Along with that, at the Hager House, to our knowledge, most of the artifacts, almost all the artifacts at the Hager House are owned by the Historical Society. And to our knowledge, we don't find any agreements between us and the Historical Society about them loaning those things to the city, and then all the insurances and everything that goes with that. So we feel like we need to bring in those agreements for you all to approve. They're just really administrative in nature, but I think it puts it in writing as it should be. And then the final thing at the Hager House is the cannon. So if you remember, there was this Mount Etna Foundry cannon that's set up on the hill behind the museum. Is on loan to Yorktown Battlefield, the celebration of their major anniversary. They did some restoration work for it. It's going to be coming back in March. And we were just thinking that there might be a better location for it where it's more visible. A lot of people don't even know about it. But I speak for myself. I didn't appreciate what a interesting and unique resource that was until Yorktown kind of educated us on that. So we'd like to put it maybe out in the front of the Hager House, but off to the side so it doesn't ruin that view of the Hager House, but then it's more visible from like Key Street. That's something Mark and our staff can build the base and everything, but we would propose maybe moving it out there.
Is there, I know where it always used to sit out in the weather. I always thought it looked like it was deteriorating out there. Is there any way to cover it or protect it from erosion?
In the restoration, they went ahead and put a preventative on top of it, so they don't really have an issue with it sitting out. They've cleaned it out inside, did a lot of research on it, and then they've coated it now with a protective coating, so they seem to be, and they're gonna design the base, we're gonna build it, but they're gonna design it to where it's specific for that can.
Okay.
So it has the right structure underneath of it.
So there shouldn't have any rust or any corrosion.
So it was really a win for us to allow them to use it because they restored it. as
Yeah,
Mark said.
definitely.
I'll keep going. So prohibition of sale of merchandise. Right now, somebody could go into the park and sell whatever it is they're selling or offer services. And we think that we probably ought to tighten that up. We do get strange requests from time to time for those kind of things. We would like to change the ordinance to say that unless it's part of a city-approved special event, like one that Amy would put together, or some other city-sponsored event, that the sale of items and services in the park like that is prohibited.
Is there any reason we wouldn't want to just license people to do that, like in the summer, an ice cream truck or a food truck or something?
We already do.
Grant specific licenses
We
for
already
that?
do,
We do that.
yes.
Correct. Well, the concessionaire pays, right?
Yeah.
Right.
so
In
they
City
have-
Park, we have a
So, I mean,
concessionaire.
But does that, do we already have the leeway then, if someone's got a food truck parked there, if they don't have a license, basically they need to move out?
Right, that's what we're saying is, like, say they came in the Fairgrounds Park with a food truck.
Right.
I guess the question is, do you want them there or not? Right
No,
now, they would be allowed to be
I
there.
want the city to know who they are, what their insurance setup is, and, you know, what their health.
But once you say they can do that, how do you then control it? Say 10 different people want to come in on a weekend when there's a soccer tournament, and we don't necessarily want them all in there.
That's the
4th of
question.
July.
And just control who we
4th
give
of July.
licenses to, I mean.
I just don't know how you do that, though. That's,
Well, basically what we're trying to control is them not just coming in and selling, because then you have competition, or you might think someone's favoritism. Or also, when people go to the park, they go to the park just to enjoy the park, and I don't think they need to be bombarded by all these people trying to sell them things. And then you can have the free roving vendors, which just walk through the park trying to sell. We just kind of want it to our control, where we're controlling who is there selling it. This summer, we had some issues with vendors trying to come in. Now, they can stay on the street if they have a vendor license through the city of Hagerstown, and they can sell off the street. But some of the vendors have tried to come into the parks and like park in the parking lots or drive up to pavilions and just start trying to sell things. And what we want is to have that control where the parks just don't become some huge marketplace if anybody wants to pull in and start selling things.
but what will you do on like the 4th of July? Where we do have those exact vendors that you're talking
That would
about?
be a controlled event that we approve. And even Harvest Hoedown, Fall Fest, any of our events, we control who goes in and who can vend. Of course, City Park, we already have an agreement there.
Right.
Fairgrounds Park, we have the soccer and the softball has concession there, so.
Where are you having the issues?
Pangborn Park was one of them this year. Wheaton Park's been one of them too this year. People just like to start pulling in and selling things, and like I say, we don't know if they have insurance, we don't want to have to get into police and insurance, food permits, we just.
They're selling food, or they're selling like quilts or something? Just whatever.
Some of it's food, just anything, it's just anything. We have one person wanting to offer services, just come in and do like different services, and we just really didn't want to turn the parks into like a market fair in the middle of the day when people are trying to enjoy things, because, a lot of us here have had children, and you go to a park to enjoy it, not to have to buy stuff from the guy walking by all the time.
I understand. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Somebody had to convince me otherwise, they'd have to come
Yeah.
in.
That's not easy.
At the dog park, we've had some conversations with the Humane Society that we need to change one of the park rules. I'm not sure that this needs mayor and council authorization. I just wanted to make you aware of it and kind of get it out in the public, is that we're suggesting we change the rule that all dogs need to be spayed or neutered to be in the dog.
I'm not okay with that.
You're not?
Just letting you know upfront.
Okay. That was a recommendation from the Humane Society.
I
Yeah, how do you police it?
There's just no way. You got like an 11-year-old dog there, and it can't go in because, it's 70-year-old owner, never spayed her. That's what it would be to me. I think I'm hoping that it wasn't a staff's recommendation, because I think that's difficult to.
It came from a citizen. We ran it past the Humane Society, and they suggested it made sense.
How would you know?
Well, that's my problem. I think it makes all the sense in the world, but if, to pass a law that is like so impractical to enforce means why do it?
Yeah.
That's fine.
I can see passing an ordinance saying you can't have a dog in heat, just because it makes sense. You can't enforce it.
Wouldn't want your dog in heat in there, I don't think.
Yeah,
That's.
but I just don't see how you can enforce it.
We can revisit that one later.
I think we should take the fence down and just make it for small dogs. That's me.
Continue, Rodney.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Amy. 5 years ago, our rec program basically didn't exist, and I think some of the stuff that Amy's going to go over here with you shows that, through her and Mark's leadership, they've done tremendous things trying to improve the health and the well-being of some of the citizens in Hagerstown want to take advantage of these programs, so I'll turn it over to her.
I'm going to pass out our hot off the press fall and winter Parks and Rec guide, if you want to pass those around. And as Rodney said, a goal of our Parks and Rec department is to help improve the image of our city and our community and promote healthy lifestyles. So each season, we're rolling out a new guide that advertises our upcoming programs. Obviously, this is our fall and winter season, and the exciting part is we've increased our distribution of this guide. We've actually doubled it. We normally printed and distributed about 20,000 of these. We now have a partnership with the Herald Mail. This will be inserted in their Sunday circulation this weekend coming up, so we'll be getting another 20,000 distributed through the Herald Mail. And then we also have a partnership with Washington County Public Schools, which send it home with all the elementary and middle school students. And those partnerships have allowed us to actually increase our distribution and actually save a little bit of money on printing. We actually used newsprint this time to print our guide, so I just wanted to mention those things. But our goal is to reach more people, advertise all the health and fitness programs that we have, and continue to grow our programming. We're always looking for new instructors to teach. The Fit Room has provided us a really great opportunity to have indoor programming, where 5 years ago we only had opportunities to do outdoor programs. So I just wanted to share this today, and actually we've been working with Wes and Eric to create a video to promote the Fit Room. So we'd like to show that as well. So I think Eric was queuing it up. It's a quick video that will be airing at Leitersburg Cinema. It'll be on Channel 25, and we'll also be sharing the video through social media, which is our biggest advertiser. We have over 8,500 followers on the Parks and Rec page now, which has doubled since 5 years ago. So
I think it's more than Rockville and Gaithersburg put together.
So that is our biggest way of getting the word out. So if you all ever have ideas for new programs you'd like to see in the Fit Room or in our parks, I think we have an opportunity to really continue to expand our programming in a lot of different ways. Ready?
The City of Hagerstown Parks and Recreation Department has the right fit for you at the Fit Room at Fairgrounds Park, offering classes fit for your schedule, budget, experience level, and for everyone in your family. Learn, grow, stretch, and step into a healthier and more active lifestyle. The City of Hagerstown's Parks and Recreation offers activities fit for you every day of the week. Register for classes now at hagerstownmd.org/parksandrec to find the right fit for you at the Fit Room at Fairgrounds Park.
So if I could share, a lot of the programs that you're seeing on there are several new ones that we are rolling out. One of the ones that you're seeing that the ribbons are hanging from the rafters, that's called our anti-gravity fitness class. That'll be a new class that we're rolling out. And then we also have American Sign Language. We have Zumba toning. We're doing hip hop soul and body soul shift. So we have a lot of new programs that we're rolling out, and again, we're always looking for new instructors to teach. So we're open to ideas or contacts that you might have, or if you go somewhere else and see classes that you're like, that would be really cool to be in the Fit Room, just kind of share that with us. So I just wanted to update everybody on the Fit Room.
Basically on those, we provide the space, and then the instructor does what they do, and we get a cut of the proceeds.
Correct.
Is that how financially those operate?
Great work. Awesome.
Anything from council for this crew?
No, thank you. Good job, thank you.
Thank you very
Fun
much.
stuff.
All right, I'll follow up with the legislative things that we need to do.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, Fairgrounds Park entrance building.
I'll just tell you, this is like one of my least favorite things to come talk to you about. So when I came in last October, we have this list of issues that the structure has. The structure is in a easement with the Maryland Historical Trust, and it was placed in there because back 15 years ago, we got some grants from the state to repaint the buildings and to stabilize them, to mothball them. Just want to make sure it's clear they're not usable, they're not habitable, they're basically in a mothballed condition, trying to keep the weather out of them and just keeping them stable. Over the last 15 years, our staff has done what we could to do some maintenance, but now there's some significant maintenance that needs done again, such as painting the building, upgrading the roof, and then there's some significant water penetration. They're wooden structures. They were never really built of the best materials or the best craftsmanship, I would say. So we're dealing with trying to maintain something like that. So when I was here in October, we decided to apply for a grant to do this maintenance. That grant was denied, so I'm kind of back to you kind of at square one now, just trying to figure out in general which direction we want to go with this building. So I tried to put together some options for you to think about, and I'll just very quickly go through those. I mean, the first one would be that we throw a ton of money at this building and try to make it habitable and usable as a city facility or something. And certainly no one would support that or recommend that, but it is an option. We do have $75,000. Our second option is we have $75,000 in city funds that we'd set up in there to be a match to the MHT grant that we could use to address like the very worst things, repainting the roof, water penetration, and then some of the things that were on the MHT's list of things that need done there, we wouldn't address at this time. The third option would be just to go into the next round of grants and apply again. I talked to MHT on Friday. They said our application was strong. It was in the top 10, but they didn't have enough funds to fund it, and they think that it possibly would be funded next year. I also tried to think about what other grants are possible, and the Heritage Area Grant is out there, but it's not exactly, what they want to see is more tourism come out of your, out of the grant, and I'm not sure that mothballing a building would create tourism. Then we could petition to try to remove the structure. So I had a long discussion with the folks at MHT about this, and obviously that's not what they want to do, and I think they have some is that the right word, idea of what this building is and what kind of, it needs, structurally it's not sound. It has all these different issues. But what they said is the only way you could get to the point where you could take it down, in their opinion, is if we showed due diligence of trying to find a use, trying to find funds, really going through the whole process where we could build this case saying, we just can't do it, we need to take it down. They did not say that we had to repay the funds. They told me that because they don't want you to do that. So they don't even have a codified mechanism.
No, they don't. Well, let's go for some more grants.
Old man Winter gets here,
Yeah, let's go for some more grants.
take care of it for us.
Yeah, my feeling, this is a really bad deal we need to get out of. And when I read the letter that, the things when they went through looking at the, what's needed to maintain the easement, I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. And
I'd much rather pay them back the $73,000 that they gave us in grants.
And get out of it.
I know they don't accept that, but
They won't allow us out of the easement, right? We did check that.
I think we have to show that we've tried to apply for grants and didn't get them. I think we have to show that we tried to find uses, so like we would advertise it for somebody to
Well,
come
it
in
is
and
part
renovate
of
it, which
our
I think we all know what the answer to that'll be.
I mean, is there any, I don't really understand what the historical significance of it is.
I will tell you, in one of the quick ways to find out that historical significance is to wait for a couple of weeks and have Mary Haynes and Penny and I come in. But I will tell you, having someone being one who grew up in Hagerstown, for people who lived here a long time, that would be a very significant feature. That was the main entrance to the Hagerstown Fairgrounds, and at one time in the past history of this community, that fairgrounds, the fair every year was a huge thing. It was every bit as big as Frederick's Fair, and along with having the horse racing here. So there are a lot of people, if you talk to who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and you would look at them and say, what's that entrance building have to do with anything? They would probably disagree. But we have these issues with historical things. Even worse is the almshouse. But I don't disagree that getting out of under an easement isn't a bad idea.
What happened to that item that was, I guess, behind the building? It was some type of like statue.
It's still there. It's called the Koss Monument.
I say that because that had some damage to it.
It was small, yeah.
And I remember there were a conversation about that 18 years ago. Oddly enough, I think we went out and we painted the building at that time.
Right.
But I put that in context. I mean, here's a little statue that we recognize has some historic value. It has been sitting there, you know, I think somebody asked for it at one time to move it somewhere else, and it's still sitting there 18 years later.
Yeah.
And I mean, here's something the size of this table. And we're talking a building, you know, the size of one of these city hall floors. I mean, it's huge. When you go inside, it's even bigger than, you know, it looks from the outside in terms of the scale of, like you said, it was cheaply made. I mean, it was built with materials that was not ever supposed to last.
It's probably volunteers and
With
materials.
Yeah, with all, I mean, it's wood. It's, you know, it's one, you know, dry August match from just being gone. And I guess I just look at it and say, I don't, you know, and even if you did everything, it still doesn't have utilities.
No.
And we're talking about a multi-story building to try and run utilities.
It's
It
never
doesn't
gonna
have
be
water,
habitable.
sewer, electric,
No,
nothing.
no,
It's
never.
never gonna be habitable. There's unless there's somebody who is, you know, of the frame of mind that they want to take this on as a project and
It
they wanna-
almost sounds like it'd be cheaper to tear the damn thing down and rebuild it in place than to try to
than
rehabilitate
to
it.
restore it. I mean, just going through this laundry list of things that they say needs to be done to it, yeah, you'd be better off tearing it down and rebuilding it. But all that being said,
So
I think
continue seeking grant money is what we're shooting for?
petition to
That's
remove
what I
the
would
entire
think.
structure.
Yeah.
And if they want the money, the grant money paid back, you know, we're basically paying $73,000 to avoid a $500,000 expense.
Yeah.
If they don't want the money back, God bless them.
I'd say we apply for grants one more time.
Thank
If we
you.
don't
Yeah,
get it,
thank you
then
very
we can
much.
petition them to take it down or something.
Yep,
Yeah,
That's
go
fine.
for it.
Okay,
sounds good.
all right, thank you.
All right, conversion of 2 part-time positions to full-time positions, yes.
Evening. So as you can see in your packets, these are support staff positions. Both are records functions clerks. From your memo that was provided to you, there's a pretty lengthy list of the things that they do. And one of the key aspects is the combination we did with the County on the Warrant Task Force. That is growing and has grown exponentially since we've started that program some years ago. And the backside of that, the processing side of the paperwork has grown and become cumbersome. The county has asked several times over the last couple of years for us to increase staffing with that, which we've not been able to do and cannot do. So one of the things we looked at was one of those positions would work strictly on that side, and that's Sharon. Her job is to work on that. She's partially funded under a grant to do protective orders that we've been funding for a long time now. And with the new law that just got passed for extreme protective orders, that's going to add to that workload for that. So with her, that works on that side. The other position, Tamara's position, is a completely functional position within our building. We have already sought out the ability of the extra time that she would be working would help supplement and pick up any extra duties when they fall behind at the task force on those functions, along with the extra stuff we have coming in for our records functions as well. To give you an example of where we are compared to another agency, we have right now 2 full-time staff, 3 part-time staff do our records functions. The county has 8. So, and we do we do just as much as they do, if not more, outside of the warrant side of things. So from a funding standpoint, to go over that for you, we have vetted this through Michelle through finance, through Wendy at HR, and through the city administrator, through Valerie, to look at how we can fund this. And we have figured out that we can fund these positions without adding anything to our budget for the foreseeable future. We're going to say now and in the foreseeable future, largely because in recent times we have just increased our revenue from the Board of Education to fund the SRO positions, which is an increase of $72,000 every year. To increase these two people to full-time positions is $20,000 annually. So just with that alone, we're still in the good of 50 grand. So this doesn't impact our budget in any way, shape, or form. It allows us to meet the needs that we need to do from our administrative functions without increasing any funding, without asking this body to bring us and give us any more funding to do that.
Fine by me.
Fine by me. Sounds good. Good job, Chief.
This 20 grand, I just have one question. Is that benefits and everything inclusive?
Yes, it's roughly $9,700 per staff.
Sounds good. Yep. All right, reestablishing the Hagerstown Police Department cadet programs. We have a graduate of that sitting in the back of the room. Who's now a doctor.
Probably one of the original ones from back when they had horse and buggies back then, so.
Yes, they did.
Just kidding, Cap, just kidding, Captain. So, as you guys all know, we are struggling with staffing. We're struggling with recruiting and retention. And so, several months ago, staff actually came to me and brought up the idea of why don't we have the cadet program. And so I put together a committee of officers, supervisors, and command staff to research what that would look like again, and not just look back historically for us, but to give you some numbers from this. Of the known 37 cadets that we've had in the past 4 decades, 64% of them retired from the police department or still work there. That's a pretty good extent. Since 2012 through 2017, we hired 58 police officers, and only 10 of those are still here. So what we're finding and what we found through our research is that agencies around the state, including the Sheriff's Department, are now having cadet programs that didn't have cadet programs before. Or they're bringing back their cadet programs, because our theory is we want to hire local, we want local kids to become into our police department. We think if we can get them early, we can keep them longer. That benefits us way down the road for a lot of different things. There's a value to keeping staff on longer term. You can't put a money value on seniority and experience. So having these cadets come in, and they would do a multitude of things, from dispatching to working the front desk, handling complaints coming in, to doing reports, working special events, riding along with the officers, learning what it is to be a police officer so they have a better understanding before they even go into the academy, is of huge value. So with that little backdrop, I've been talking to Dave Hayes at the Emergency Operations Center, the director there, and he has already talked to Rob Slocum, and I'm at liberty to go ahead and tell you this now. They are at least in agreement to fund half of 6 of these cadets, the salary portion of those cadets. And doing so, that we would give them the opportunity to work at the dispatch center for up to 50% of the time that they're here. There is value there. There's a lot to be learned to do in this job if you can work at dispatch center. You're handling those same complaints, those same people, and you just don't over the phone. So we're willing to help them with their problem, their staffing issue there, by helping us fund our cadet program. With this, again, we would work within the framework of the staffing that we have. We have vacancies, salary vacancies that we have. So the 6 that we would bring on board eventually, we'd have 6 on board. They would be candidates for the open positions that we already have. So we're not asking you to increase our staffing. We're going to use the vacancies that we currently have to bring them on board. Once they reach the age of 20 and a half, if there's an academy available, they go into that so they can graduate at 21 to be a police officer. So that function covers there. So with that, there's a huge salary savings that we already have just from the seniority level. So when we have senior level people retiring and leaving to the new people coming in, there's a salary savings there of $106,000 annually that we're saving right now. These cadets would make about $25,000 a year. And that's going to be within the same framework and the same pay scale as what the state police pay their cadets. So we're going to stay competitive in that nature to bring them in. We have a source right here in our community to feed us those cadets. And that's the Public Safety Center. They're run by the School Board of Ed. We have kids there that want to be cops, but they graduate, they don't have any ability to do that, they go off to college, and they don't come back. They find other things to do before they ever get the chance to be the cop. So the dynamics have changed, and the people that we're seeking. And
Would
we
you
really,
still require them to go to HCC and?
yes, part of the program would be they could go to HCC and take a certain number of classes while they're actually on duty if necessary, so that we wouldn't fault them for that. So if they had a class they needed to take during the day, then while they're working during those 2 hours or hour, they would go to class. We want that. We want to encourage that. We want them to have that higher education by the time they actually get to.
And we reimburse them if they keep a certain grade.
Well, right now, there's no tuition reimbursement. That's not part of this program. That's
Okay.
something that we could talk about later as a much bigger thing, but.
Well, they're making a lot more money than I know cadets made back when Tommy was cadet going to college.
So, but it would allow them to go to college. They wouldn't have to work around their schedule as much, so we would still allow them to do that. So this comes as not just myself or the captain presenting this, but you don't have them behind me, but I have the department is backing this. The membership of the department wants this to happen, has wanted this to happen for a long time. And at no fault of previous administrations that I've worked under, low-lying fruit, when budget cuts had to come, things had to get cut, and this got cut with unintended consequences foreseen for that. So it's not a dig on anything from there. But we really believe that this is a way for us to regain long-term employment instead of the short-term employment that we're seeing from our current people that we've been hiring, staying for just a few years and leaving for whatever reason that they go. Keeping kids here local that's born and raised here, their families are here, we think we'll have them stay longer term with us.
Yeah, I think recruiting local that's the way to go. I'm 100% in favor of this.
This also stays within our budget. Again, not asking for any other money. We have figured out our budget for this. We've vetted that through finance, through HR, and through the city administrator to show them and prove to them that we're not going to be coming back in a couple of years asking you to fund this, because we've figured it out. We've looked long-term. It's one of the things that I've promised that I would do, is not come in here and ask for any more money to do these things. It gets us there. I'm 3 years out at the minimum to get back up to 112, and I'm never going to get 112. Someone's always going to retire. Someone's always going to get fired, or they're going to leave for a job. There's always going to be a vacancy somewhere. My goal is to get as close to 112 as I can get to do the things that I do. No one ever gets fully staffed and stays there. I mean, that's just how it works. But and as I've talked about before, the turnaround is every bit of 360 days to 500 days to replace someone from the time they leave till I can put someone back in that seat by themselves. That's a long time to have that vacancy sitting there. I mean, I may have someone in the academy, I may have someone hired, but they're just not out doing the job by themselves yet. And that's just the way it is in law enforcement, the way we have to do our business. So trying to minimize that and mitigate that is really what the goal is here, to get as many members on the street and always on the street at one time. So.
I mean, based on the success of the program in the past, it seems like it's, and the fact that, I had to call the police the other night, and it took a very, very long time because you're short-staffed, and anything could have happened during that time period. And luckily, it wasn't an extreme danger, but it could have been. And so anything that is going to help prevent that situation, because if it wasn't me and not standing there with my husband, I don't know what could have happened. So I fully support this, especially based on the statistics. So, good job.
Not trying to get off track, and I know it's only been 5 days, but you've been putting your thinking cap on about what we can do to enhance, to get laterals.
We are seeking to promote some more on Facebook. Again, it comes down to competitiveness. And the competitiveness isn't necessarily always salary, but
Right.
it's, I think you're gonna be hearing from me here in the future with talking to staff on coming up with other ways to provide some of those things that are there, that are just outside the normal cost of a salary. I think that, you know, that's what we gotta kinda do. Everyone's trying to find around the country and around the
Sure
area.
they are.
I mean, I'm not asking for this, I'm not saying I'm gonna ask for this, but there are people that are doing sign-on bonuses and all kinds of things. And they're not having as much success either. I mean, everyone's trying to get, you know, the pool's very limited, and it's very competitive, and it doesn't take much, you know, and unfortunately, the culture of the generations that are working, are coming up to come into work now, look at things differently. And they don't see it the way we did, you know, growing up. They're not looking at long-term a lot of times. So it's how do we convince them to stay long-term?
Right.
One question, Chief, you did say you have support of the department, so that means the union, there's not an issue gonna come back from the union or any kind of
The
grievance?
union members
or
were part of
anything?
this committee,
Okay.
including the union president was part of this committee
Very
that
good.
drafted the research that was coming to us to put this together. I brought this to Chief Brito at the time. We didn't get a chance to get it finalized in there before he
Okay.
left, but this has got the backing of the department, yes.
Good.
Spoke to your union rep this morning, and he said it's about time we finally get this done.
Good.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Chief. City Administrator?
Well, I'd like to thank council for all their time from last week's goal-setting meeting, and appreciate everything. I think it was a very successful meeting. I think we had good conversation, and we actually have majority on quite a few goals. So what we're working on now is, I'm working on putting together a document for you that will list those out. I want to put it in a format that you can formally adopt, and then we know that this is your, you know, it doesn't mean it's set in stone, but it's a formal adoption of a plan for the remainder of your administration. So I think it would be good to bring that back at a work session, maybe one of the ones in October. I should be able to have that together for that. Have it in a work session, let you review it, discuss it again one more time, and then take formal action on it.
Sounds good.
Okay? But again, thank you for that, and that's all I had.
Lou?
Nothing for tonight, Mayor, thank you.
Jim?
No, sir?
Austin?
Nope.
Kristen? Emily? Oh, my God, that 1,000. All right. Me either. So we're adjourned. See you next Tuesday.
Thank you very much.
Look at that, 5:05.